Okay, so I have a very difficult task, which is to try to use the next 20 minutes to explain you how industry can be the climate knight, being climate the princess and industry the knight that will save the climate, which is not 100% truth, because what happens is that climate is actually a great opportunity for industry too. So, and I'll try to go there, if this allows me. No. Okay, it's also not working. Can you pass the slides in the back? Okay, so first things first, before actually deep diving into industry, it's important to actually take a look at the general context nowadays, which is, I would say, quite challenging, but still filled with opportunities. First of all, the basis. So we are in the middle of a climate crisis, which has combined with a COVID, with a pandemic crisis. And on top of that, as this was not enough, there was war in Ukraine and already another war in Israel and Palestine. And of course, this actually makes the basis of a perfect storm also for the industry, because industry and global value chains are, of course, affected by all these events and by everything that is happening. Yeah, thank you. So, first, inflation, high interest rates, high energy prices, high carbon prices, supply chain disruptions, so also logistics and transportation, and then prices and availability of critical materials is actually becoming an issue, and there are lots of competitiveness imbalances between the European bloc, so EU and Asia and the US. And so there are, I would say, a lot of challenges for the industry deriving from this context at this moment. Yeah. Okay. But at the same time, what is interesting is that from all these factors which are quite challenging, it's also a moment where a more sustainable or smart, as Susanna mentioned, or future industry is emerging. So, first of all, there are lots of discussions on strategic autonomy. So, should Europe be more autonomous in terms of what really matters in industry for its economy and for its society? And then, what is happening is also a movement of industry coming back to Europe and coming back also to Portugal. But it's a different industry. So it's a reshoring of some activities, but done in a different way. So a more sustainable approach to it. Also, industrial policy is coming back. So the Inflation Reduction Act in the US, the Recovery and Resilience Facility or plans in Europe. So everything is starting to focus also on the industry. Again, what is also happening is that on top of this, regulatory environment is changing. So there is this green transition starting, and especially in Europe, which is quite challenging in terms of competitiveness, but it's very relevant and it's an ongoing movement. So the Green Deal, Fit for 55, ESG, so all this is here and it will stay here. And at the same time, there is a new wave of innovation. So there are emerging value chains, new technologies, new processes, and new products starting to come up. And this is true for all industry, but especially for what was called the heavy industry or the basic industry. And this is the interesting part of it, because I love this quote. It was something that people thought it was an Obama quote. It was not. It's Paul Romer, so it's a guy from Stanford that basically said a crisis is a terrible thing to waste, which is true. And this is exactly what we're seeing. So we're in the middle of a major crisis with several factors, so a wicked problem, as economists call it, but at the same time, a very interesting opportunity to emerge different and to emerge better in terms of competitiveness and sustainability. Yeah? So, coming back to the basic questions, can industry be the climate knight? And if so, can it combine both goals, sustainability of course, but also competitiveness in order to actually anchor industry in Portugal and in Europe? I'll give you, of course, the case of the chemical industry, because it's basically where we stand at APQuímica, as we are the association for the Portuguese chemical, petrochemical and refining sector. And on that, the first factor, or one of the first factors that will make it happen, that will make industry be the climate knight, or at least take advantage of climate opportunities and at the same time become more sustainable, it's on innovation. So this picture was taken in 1927, I think, at the Solvay conferences in Brussels, where what you can see at the time was a moment that was also between wars, so there was a very challenging moment also, but where science and innovation actually took a major role into improving lots of industries and lots of processes. And what you see here, from Einstein to Marie Curie to Max Planck, so you have at the time the crème of the crème of chemicals and physicists in Europe. And they started an innovation revolution in a way that we still benefit from that. Can you pass it? Okay, and now we are a bit in the same moment in time. It's a different setting, but it's also a quite challenging setting. So can history repeat itself? What you see here, and I'm looking at my CEFIC colleagues, so there was this gathering for the 50 years of CEFIC last year in 2022, where most scientists, the top scientists in Europe and some of the top students united actually to try to recreate the photo on the beginning of the 20th century. And what is happening is that right now innovation is also at the forefront and is happening at a very strong pace also in Europe and across the world. And this is one of the factors that will actually help industry become the climate knight. Yeah? Okay, another factor is critical mass. So these are the numbers of the Portuguese chemical sector, but you could have the same for Europe or even across the world. So it's a sector that's very capital intensive, with high investment in innovation, and at the same time it's very connected to world markets, to international markets. So the exports of the Portuguese chemical sector, just to give you an idea, are around 14% of total Portuguese exports. So it's a sector that represents a major critical mass that is relevant to make this change happen. Can we? Thank you. So the other features that are very relevant for this is that first, it is transversal. It's at the beginning of most value chains across the economy. So it's where it all starts, which means it can be also where it all ends. So the idea of circular economy is something that is a bit embedded into the chemical sector. And this is relevant for decarbonization strategies and for what we're trying to do. Also, it's very diversified, from refining to basic chemicals, industrial gases, medical gases, very important during COVID, for instance, specialty chemicals, pharma, active ingredients, biochem, biotech, so new materials, nanomaterials. You have a lot of things going on across the sector, which helps it to actually support other sectors in the decarbonization process. Also, it has a very strong industry-academia connection, which is very interesting. We have one of the few PhD programs in industrial environment in Portugal that is working for 15 years. And it has been the basis of some very interesting projects and interesting innovations on the industry. Also, on the other hand, the chemical sector is one of the most energy-intensive sectors in the Portuguese industry. And it's also very heavy on CO2 emissions, which means it has a lot to decarbonize, so it's part of the problem, a big part of the problem, but it's also, and this is the interesting part, a big part of the solution, because it has all the different elements to help support its own decarbonization and also the decarbonization of other sectors in the economy. Okay. So one of the challenges is exactly how can we achieve a sustainable green transition while remaining competitive, so while actually anchoring industry in Europe. And what I'm going very quickly to go through is some of the projects, some of the challenges. So we start with the challenges that the heavy industry, so the chemical industry is facing, but then at the same time, what are the projects, what is being done to actually transform those challenges into opportunities, not only opportunities for decarbonization, but also opportunities for new businesses and new value chains and new areas of industry growth. So, no, sorry, one back, thank you. So first challenge, energy price, electrification. So we can decarbonize if we electrify. It's not 100% truth. It depends on the mix of that energy, but it also depends on the type of industry you're in, because there are sectors and subsectors in the chemical sector that are hard to abate. And this hard to abate means that they are not easily electrified. And so there is this approach or this dilemma on storage capacities, on costs, on how can industry electrify. Okay, and I'll get back to that. Challenge 2 and 3, it's on the green hydrogen. So right now, what is happening is that a new value chain of a not so new product is emerging, and it's becoming very important again, not only as feedstock, which is the case in the chemical industry, where hydrogen and now green hydrogen is a very relevant feedstock for several products, but also as an energy source, okay? That might be one option and one solution to replace natural gas, which, by the way, is one of the key challenges currently. Okay, so and this is something that is starting to happen, and it's actually moving forward, and Portugal is also on the forefront with several projects around this green hydrogen value chain. Again, linked to that is an issue on water consumption, because some of this hydrogen is produced through water electrolysis, and this means that water consumption and industrial water recycling, reuse, recirculation, so this idea of circularity comes to have an important role in this process. So it's another area where there are lots of projects ongoing, and that is actually another major opportunity for industry to decarbonize at the same time as to grow. Yes? Okay. Carbon capture, storage, and utilization, the same thing. Carbon is a critical feedstock for the chemical industry, but exactly because of that, it's also very relevant as a way to capture that carbon and reuse it to actually engage into developing and delivering new products. And so this is another area where the chemical sector is working in the decarbonization arena. And then safe and sustainable by design. So the idea of actually starting to develop things sustainable at the forefront, not only to try to solve the problems at the later stage, but also to try to actually embed this approach and this philosophy in product development. And this is also happening across Europe, and there are lots of regulations actually happening in this area. So what we're also doing at the European level, and maybe my CEFI colleague will mention it later in the roundtable, there is a transition pathway for the EU chemical industry that has been launched by the European Commission in early January this year. And it was the first one from all energy-intensive industries. And this means that the chemical sector has this potential of actually delivering some solutions also for other sectors. And that's why it was the starting point of all this. And we in Portugal are doing kind of a back-to-back approach with our decarbonization roadmap that we are developing currently, also based on the quantitative models that have been used in the at European level. And this is an ongoing project right now. There are other projects from consortia and some of our member companies, one of them on green hydrogen, as I mentioned before. So this is one of the green agendas for the Recovery and Resilience Plan here in Portugal. So it's the H2 Enable from Bondalti, but has a lot of other different players involved. Then we have another one. Can you pass on? Thank you. So we have some other projects on lithium, so batteries for electric vehicles as a way to decarbonize transportation. So this is another way where the chemical sector is also supporting the decarbonization of other sectors, not only of industry, but in this case of transportation. Yes. So this is, we have at the time in Portugal several projects ongoing, large new industrial projects being delivered or at the starting point or being analyzed in order to actually have investment decisions that will, I would believe, shape differently the way not only of the chemical sector in Portugal but also of the industry as a whole in terms of how to tackle this climate change challenge. Other projects on the as you see down in Repsol, so it's one of the biggest industrial photovoltaic parks for self-consumption. So we have several projects, ongoing projects on decarbonization of industry ongoing, and this is just one example between many. The other one is where chemicals or basic chemicals meet green tech and biotech and biochemicals. So it's an installation where you have algae, microalgae production to actually be able to produce biojet fuel and other approaches. So this is another project that is ongoing. And this is non-exhaustive. There are lots of things happening, and at the same time, there also include other industries. So the relation and the link to other industries and downstream sectors is very relevant because you cannot do this as a single effort. It needs to be a joint effort from industry and also with the public sector and other relevant stakeholders. So again, can industry be the climate knife? And if so, can it combine sustainability and competitiveness? So we're going back to the initial question. And the answer is yes, it can. Thank you.